Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Kenneth T. Malilay from the Institute of Animal Science, College of Agriculture and Food Science, University of the Philippines, Las Bañas, and I will be your host for today's event. Ako po ang makakasama po ninyo ngayong hapon. Aside from Zoom, we are also live via the College of Agriculture and Food Science official Facebook page and YouTube channel. For our participants, you may type in your questions in the Google form link that will be posted in the comment section of Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. We will entertain your questions at the end of the lecture. As this is a public space, may we request everyone to observe courtesy at all times. After the webinar, a QR code and a link to the post-webinar evaluation form will be flashed on your screens. To receive a copy of your certificate of attendance, you are required to accomplish the evaluation form. Again, welcome to our webinar entitled Teaching and Learning in Survival Mode. This webinar is organized by the Student Health and Welfare Committee of the College of Agriculture and Food Science. This is specifically intended for our teachers and students engaged in online learning. This event would not be possible without the support of our beloved Dean, Dr. Elpidio M. Agbisit Jr., initiative and supervision of Dr. Catherine Anti Castillo Israel, Chair of the CAF Student Health and Welfare Committee, and the hard work and dedication of the rest of the committee members. Thank you, everyone. This webinar is only the first of the many webinars that the committee has in store for you with topics covering stress management, mental health, and self-care. So please like and follow us on our social media platforms so you can be notified on the schedules of our upcoming activities. To formally start our program, may we call on the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Food Science to give his welcome remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, mga CAFSama, please welcome Dr. Elpidio M. Agbisit Jr. Good afternoon, Doc Pids.
Hello, Kenneth. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes po, Doc, loud
Okay.
and clear.
Thank you, Kenneth. Gumagawa po kaya tayo ngayon, Kenneth.
Thank you, Doc.
A blessed and pleasant day to everyone. On behalf of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, I wish to thank all the participants present in this webinar, Teaching and Learning in Survival Mode, brought to you by the Student Health and Welfare Committee of the college, headed by Dr. Catherine Ann C. Israel. Thank you very much, Kathy and team, for this initiative. Our classes has ended last year, and yet the submission, last week pala, and yet the submission of requirement and giving of grades was extended until January. We know that the faculty and students are under stress with a lot of things to think about aside from academics. This year, 2020, has been a challenge for everyone with natural disasters, the pandemic, typhoons, testing us all. Sabi nga nila, ang bakal ay lalong tumitibay sa lumalagalablab na apoy. This year, we were forged in the flames of adversity, making everyone, I believe, stronger and better. To our speaker, Dr. Salvador Benjamin D. Vista from the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine of UP Manila, thank you for giving us some of your time to share your knowledge and expertise to our dear faculty, staff, students, and administrators. It means so much to us, especially when almost everyone is struggling with the situation brought about by COVID-19 pandemic. I hope, sir, that you can visit us again in Los Baños if the situation will permit it. To everyone, let us help each other and be extra sensitive to the needs of others in these trying times. Remember, We are one college, one family, one aspiration in good times and in bad times. CAFSama tayong lahat. Thank you and may you remain safe and healthy and God bless us all. Kenneth?
Thank you so much, Doc Pete. So kasama po ninyo si Dean at ang buong College of Agriculture and Food Science. So in today's webinar, our guest speaker will describe how human brain works in survival mode. He will also discuss common struggles of students dealing with online learning. And for our teachers, he will suggest some psychologically minded adjustments on how you should teach in the online setup. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our guest speaker. Our guest speaker for today is a diplomate of the Philippine Board of Psychiatry. He is a fellow of the Philippine Psychiatric Association, Philippine College of Psychopharmacology, and the Philippine College of Addiction Medicine. He is an associate professor of the College of Medicine and the Philippine General Hospital, University of the Philippines, Manila, and the chief psychiatrist of the St. Luke's Medical Center Extension Clinic. Our speaker is also the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at Asian Hospital and Medical Center and also the medical director of the Juan Algon Place Behavioral Resource Center. Ladies and gentlemen, mga kakafsama, let us all welcome Dr. Salvador Benjamin D. Vista. Doc Vista,
Hello, good afternoon,
good afternoon
mga
po.
CAFSama. Magandang hapon sa lahat. Ako po si Ben Vista at ako ay inatasan ni Ma'am Katsi na mag-lecture sa inyo ngayon. Salamat naman Ma'am Katsi sa invitasyon and thank you Dean for your wonderful words of wisdom and welcome. Um, and of course John Kenneth for the introduction. Marami pong salamat. Um, I will now show my screen, but I will ask permission from everybody to just maybe turn off my video because of probable connectivity problems. I hope that's all right. Kasi yung aming connectivity dito sa aming lugar hindi masyadong malakas. So maybe I will just turn off my video and then please allow me to share my screen. All right. So nung nilapitan ako ni Ma'am Katsi para magbigay ng konting uh, well, tips and pointers regarding yung sitwasyon natin ngayon. And you know, dearly beloved, all of us are in this situation of COVID. And what I did first thing was I tried to survey some of the students whom I know, both in the UP system, and that's in UP Manila, and also in the private schools. And really the general trends, and of course, you know, I have been still practicing psychiatry even as early as March, you know, when COVID came. And it's really a study in stress. And I really formed the conclusion that we are still in survival mode, you know, with the virus still there, and of course there is talk of vaccines coming, but until the time comes, it's survival mode because when you are isolated and you cannot work, and you know, all of us know what all of us have lost. We have lost our previous lives, and we are now just doing things in order to survive. If there is anybody in this world who is not in survival mode, then we should really salute them. Because even if you have resources, like you have money, perhaps, how will you spend the money? Because there's probably not many things to buy, at least not right now, because all the productivity has gone down. So I said, when I said Professor Katsi came to me and approached me and said, can we have some sort of an idea of maybe tips and pointers for the students? And, uh, every year I seem to be the chosen person to go to UPLB and talk to the new faculty. And although it was originally, the I think the university student office, student affairs that would invite me, but I'm really proud and humbled to be here with you. So in your college, no? So teaching and learning, what I said, in survival mode, because we need to bring the discussion a little bit higher on not just how we're surviving this, but how we teach and learn here. So I'll start with this. And this is the truth, especially for the teachers. No? 65% of grade school students now will work in jobs that don't exist today. The internet and technology has really overtaken us. And one of these days, the typical, the professional, usually sought after professions will no longer be really relevant. I mean, how relevant will an attorney be, a lawyer be, if all the laws were put on an app, and if you were accused of a crime, you could very well just go to the court, search all the relevant laws and whatever legal procedures and guidelines, and defend yourself. Even in medicine, radiology, for example, question is who can read the X-rays or the MRIs or the CT scans better? Would it be a human being or would it be a computer? So 80% of our students wonder if they will have a job when they graduate. No? So yan ang thinking mode ng mga estudyante natin, lalo na yung mga first year, mga kapatid. And that's why many of them, don't see the point. And of course, they will always want a boss who's got their back. And it's like they'll also want a teacher who's got their back. And I will actually talk about that more in a while. They will be a different kind of professional, not a 40-week cube worker, but freelance contractors who solve problems with particular expertise. Marami ng ganyan ngayon. And of course, they are wary of long-term plans. They are not planning on a 30-year career at any one place. So what are the objectives of this talk? Okay, so as was said earlier, to describe the human brain in survival mode, because I think we need to, I think I need to show you what is going on really in the brain of somebody now who is in survival mode with all this stress. Second is to discuss common difficulties that students and teachers dealing with online learning. And as I said, I did a little bit of surveying at least some of the students and some of the teachers to suggest some psychologically minded adjustments on how we teach. So the outline of this, at first, ladies and gentlemen, I will do a basic introduction and just talking about the basic philosophy of how I suggest we deal with this new reality. The second part, of course, will be the human brain. I'll talk about it, and stress. And I'll focus on the adolescent brain para maintindihan natin yung ating mga estudyante. And I think some of you who are newly teaching there, the new faculty, will also be in this category because adolescence is now defined as the second 12 years of life. So if you are 24 and below, adolescent ka pa. So anong ibig sabihin yan? Nagde-develop pa yung brain mo. And we will be talking about ano ba yung nangyayari sa tao pag adolescent na siya. And then, of course, I will end by talking about what I call attachment-based teaching. Now, what is attachment? Okay, kapit. Okay, but attachment theory originated by Bowlby is actually defining the healthy interaction of a mother and a child, or a teacher and a student in teaching in these COVID times. Okay, so by way of introduction, sana tayo mga kapatid, we have left our known reality and are moving to an unknown reality. This is the big problem that we have because we are crossing over this space. And the term for this space is the threshold or liminal space. Okay, what are examples of liminal spaces? Well, there are many. I mean, if you go uh, to the beach, a liminal space could be the place between the shore and the sea. In terms of time, liminal space could also be the time between night and day, which we call dawn. It also can be from the transitioning from day to night, which we call dusk. These are liminal spaces. What are other liminal places? Churches are liminal places. Airports are liminal places because there is really a movement from one reality to another one. So we are in this pandemic crossing over a liminal space. Para tayong ganito eh. And although itong picture na ito, itong image na pinapakita ko sa inyo, medyo air condition siguro to at mabango, 'di ba? Pero tayo, nakayuko pa rin tayo dito kasi hindi natin alam kung ano ang mangyayari sa atin moving forward. Some of us even are so afraid of crossing over into the liminal space that we might even choose not to cross over there, but instead go here to the right and just exit. And these are the people who are saying, ayoko na. And they, of course, do harmful acts on themselves and commit or attempt to commit suicide. Mabuti naman itong liminal space na ito kasi carpeted and parang ang very comfortable, no? But the liminal space can also be like this, and many of our students are here in a liminal space that is very cold and very dark and very scary. You, even as a teacher, may also be in a liminal space like this. So let's pause a little bit kasi sabi ko nga, we're moving from an old reality into a new one. But what really is the nature of reality? Nobody really knows what that is. It's like this figure that I'm showing you, the image of the blind man and the elephant. See, everybody is saying, this one is saying it's a fan, it's a spear, it's a snake. Because our image of reality is really only our own, and none of us really knows what the big picture is. So, what we tend to do, therefore, is when moving from an old reality to a new reality, we tend to cling to our old reality as it worked before, so it should work again. Because this is what I know. And it ends up, my dear brothers and sisters, that we end up trying to fit in a square peg in a round hole as solutions for our current problems. So, again, we go back to this, no, the liminal space. This is our known reality, and this is our the new reality. So, how do we define our known reality? It's through our experience and observations before. These experiences and observations, we try to pick what is relevant in terms of what we need. So relevance and needs. Then we build assumptions. Yan pala ang kailangan ko to survive in this world. And then we make conclusions because as we try our assumptions, then we form conclusions about what's the right thing to do. And then after we have a bunch of conclusions and put them all together, then we have our beliefs. And this is the way the mind works, dear brothers and sisters. Because once you have your beliefs, then we try to make those beliefs make us feel safe and certain. The beliefs become our self-sealing logic that Dave Gray puts forward. Self-sealing kasi it locks you into what your beliefs are. And it is, what the person thinks is our truth is just basically the only truth. It's normal and usual and average for people to be like this. So we end up making a self-sealing bubble around us of our beliefs. Walang makaka-penetrate dyan. Kasi paniniwala ako ito, it worked for me before, this is the only truth that I will listen to because it has already proven to be correct before. When you challenge, when you try to create change in somebody's beliefs, they will not react to that in a very happy way. When a critical incident that happens, the volcanic eruptions, the several typhoons, COVID, when critical incidents happen, human beings tend to cling to those self-sealing logic and self-sealing logic all the time because that will make them safe and feel secure. They will reject any suggestion to change the beliefs and the conclusions. That will result, of course, in conflict, and they end up by not adapting. Pardon me na lang, mga kapatid, because I belong to a university too. And I am not accusing my university of being like this, but perhaps it might be. But what I see in most schools, because I have many patients from all over, no, and in different schools, but what we're trying to do kasi with the educational system nowadays is we're trying to use what we did in 2019 and try to just put everything online. Okay? Kasi social distancing or physical distancing, so no face to face. But that's the thing that we need to kind of sandali lang, 'di ba? Because the world of online is not a very it's very different from the other world. We have to look at things in another way. But you see, if somebody sees another way of doing it, another way of teaching, another way of assessing, another way of evaluating our students, it immediately is rejected. And there is a lot of conflict that goes on. People will start shouting at each other. And what we end up doing is we don't adapt at all. So some of our students and even some of us teachers get stuck therefore. No? Ito na lang yung sinasabi sa amin eh. So, gawin ko na lang ng gawin to. Matuto ako doon sa mga online platform, ganyan-ganyan. And but in the mind of everybody, it's still back there in 2019. There's always a subliminal wish that 2019 is still here, but we're just doing it online. So what do we end up doing? Getting stuck. Or what's worse, falling back. Maraming mga estudyante na ganyan ngayon, mga kapatid. Ayoko na. I'll just wait na lang until this settles down and then there is face-to-face again. Maraming mga estudyante na gumawa ng desisyon na yan. But syempre, yung mga estudyante natin sa University of the Philippines, mga scholar yan. And of course, they really want to take advantage of the scholarships that are given to them. And that's an added stress. But sometimes they're in such limbo that they just don't want to move anymore or just want to surrender. I'll show you why in a little while, the functioning of the brain and why it is like that. Another one, of course, is very common also now, brothers and sisters. Liminoid. Okay? It comes, these are terms coming from the word liminal space. Ito naman, addictions. Kasi liminoid means immediate transformation naman na ibahin mo na kaagad yung beliefs mo. So pag high ka sa drugs, syempre, you really transport yourself immediately from an old world to a new one. But of course, all of us know that that is not really a healthy thing. So we need to think now. How do we cross this liminal space? But and maybe what we need to do, mga kapatid, is to deconstruct. It's very hard to do that kasi the old beliefs nga kasi are the ones that kept us safe and the ones that made us feel secure before. But we really need to deconstruct our current beliefs. And sometimes when I give a lecture like this, sometimes a person in the audience says, even our belief in God, Dr. Ben? And I said, yes. Because don't we already, now everybody's questioning, does God really love us? But what we do when maybe we say we don't believe in the God that I had before, but the challenge is to deconstruct and perhaps maybe say, maybe I will have a deeper faith in God now because of this pandemic. Maybe I will call on Him more often now because we are humbled in this pandemic. And maybe that's the reason why we need to even seek God out more. So we need, my dears, to deconstruct our beliefs. Believing, for example, that we should lecture, for example, to a hall of 200 students at one time. And by the way, I tried doing that in UP Manila. I don't know how much learning happened there. But these are just examples of beliefs that we need to deconstruct. And we need to deconstruct the conclusions that came with those beliefs and make new conclusions about what's happening. But you'll say, how do we do that? We need to make new assumptions about COVID and the COVID world. We need to reassess what is really relevant to us and what do we really need. And of course, we have to pay attention. A lot of people don't pay attention. We need new experiences. We need to make new observations so that we can again construct a new belief system. Okay, so enough of the introduction. Now let's go to the brain. And I know I have said some controversial things in the introduction, but please, you can we can discuss that later. So look at that magnificent organ that I'm showing you there. 100 billion neurons with 100 trillion connections. It's a wonderful computer, ladies and gentlemen. So we need to kind of take care of it all the time. But also we need to look into how it's functioning, especially in this time of great stress. But I say in this next slide, stress is the ultimate sign of life. Although some of you, I don't like to be stressed, and stress seems to have a negative connotation all the time. But, you know, I propose to you, if you feel stressed, there's a positive leaning on that because that means you're still alive. Because when you're alive, there will always be some sort of stress. And stress is not necessarily unhealthy all the time. There are many forms of stress that actually make us succeed and perform to an unexpectedly successful degree. And of course, how does one assess the stress reaction? Well, you have physical reactions, diba? As shown here. You have emotional reactions, so feelings. You have thoughts or cognitive reactions, and the stress behavior that you show. And finally, you have spiritual reaction. So when you're encountering a student who is under stress, and I will be repeating this again at the towards the end of the lecture, we must assess along these lines. How is the student taking care of their physical body? How is the student feeling? How is the student thinking? And how do the thoughts and the mood contribute to produce the behavior that they are doing? And of course, is there a spiritual problem in this student? And mga kapatid, it would also be good if you could also make that assessment along these parameters for yourself. Because when you have really an imbalance in one of them, then you can probably already have a clue on how first to solve the problem that you have. When you are under chronic stress, and many of us are in this mode now, no? It's been how many months? Since March, no? So 3/4 of the year we have been under stress. All of us. There's nobody who was exempted from this. So of course, the hypothalamus stimulates the pituitary gland to release excessive adrenocorticotropic hormone, driving the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands, which are on top of your kidneys, release excessive amounts of catecholamines and cortisol. No? Increase in catecholamines like adrenaline, no? They can lead to myocardial ischemia, diminished heart rate variability, and contribute to ventricular arrhythmias. These can also cause platelet activation. Increase in cytokines and interleukins may also contribute to atherosclerosis. So, liliit ang mga daluyan ng dugo. And of course, cortisol antagonizes insulin and contributes to dyslipidemia, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. It increases also and suppresses the immune system. And, we need the immune system to fight against COVID. So let me try to simplify. Kasi you'll say, wow, Dr. Ben, that's 100 billion neurons. So how can we understand now how that magnificent computer actually works so we can understand the brain under stress or the brain in survival mode? We can divide it into three. No? So you can have this red area here. This is called the brain stem, and part of it is the diencephalon. No? So this is called the reptilian brain. Kasi the reptiles, including the dinosaurs, had something like this. It evolved about 300 million years ago. And actually, the remnants of it in our brains are found in the brain stem nga and the diencephalon. This is our reptilian brain, according to MacLean. All right? And it really focuses uh, on survival, basic survival. So it's the one that makes us, when we're encountered with a problem, feel really stressed out, because here are centered heart rate monitoring or regulating, breathing regulation, temperature regulation. No, so that's the reason why when you have a panic attack or you're in panic, no, you have palpitations and rapid breathing, and your temperature goes up and down, and you have sweaty palms because of an autonomic kind of a cascade when this is turned on. So, ang reaction ng reptilian brain, mga kapatid, is really the 4 Fs. What are the 4 Fs? Fight, flee or flight, freeze, and faint. So, when this is the one running our whole brain, pag ito na yung namumuno sa buong utak natin, yan, either tatakbo ka, mangangaway ka na, ah, you don't move in the hope that if you don't move, the predator will not bite you and you can just faint, shut down. Okay, so that is the survival state. Now, above that is this blue area that we call the limbic system. The limbic system naman, mga kapatid, this is the one that we have that is common among the lower mammals. The lions, tigers, the dogs, and the cats. This is the emotional brain because really the lower mammals are, their brains are driven by emotion. Seldom can kind of stop an angry dog from biting you by saying, Mr. Dog, sandali lang. Pag-isipan mo muna kung kagatin mo ba ako o hindi. Because their brains are like our limbic lobe, driven by emotion. And when you are emotionally upset, angry, depressed, uh, um, guilty, uh, all the anxious, no? This is the one that is driving the brain. Now, humans develop this thick, look at this thick cortex. We call it the neocortex. It's called the new cortex. And look, it's like a protective cap that goes over the limbic lobe and the reptilian brain and the brain stem that I introduced to you earlier. Para siyang, it looks like a motorcycle crash helmet. And it functions in the same way because this neocortex, this new cortex, actually when you spark neuronal activity here, it's usually thinking activity. No? So this is the thinking brain, especially the one in green, which is the prefrontal cortex. This is the part that really makes us human, right? Because here you have things like empathy and intuition and higher knowledge and higher learning and reasoning. They're all up here. Okay? Now, when you spark up this, it will immediately patahimikin niya yung dito sa ilalim. Patahimikin niya ang limbic, patahimikin niya yung reptilian brain. That's why even when, sometimes when you listen to people telling you, how do you calm yourself down? And they say, you breathe. Yes, because when you breathe, although breathing is actually controlled by this system automatically, but when you are upset and you are hyperventilating or breathing very, very, very fast, what you can do is try to be conscious of your breath, and it moves the function of breathing from this area, which is the 4F area, to this area. So even just being conscious of your breathing will already spark up your thinking brain. It makes the action of breathing conscious and controllable and really a thinking kind of a process. So when you do that, automatically it quiets down these areas. That's why there is uh, the maneuvers that can be done when somebody has a panic attack. What? You can ask them to breathe, be conscious of their breathing, guided imagery, or even saying a mantra or a prayer. Well, of course, I'm saying prayer. Prayer really probably brings in God into the context of your problem, but really just saying a prayer over and over again, that sparks up a lot of neuronal activity here, and it automatically calms down the uh, the areas below it. So really, the brain is a hierarchical structure from bottom to top and from simple to complex. No? So brainstem nga, that's the reptilian brain. You have the diencephalon, brainstem and the diencephalon, and then you have the uh, old mammalian brain, and of course you have the primate human brain. So hierarchical meaning this in the human being should be supreme sana all the time. The problem is when you're under stress, this might take over or this might take over. Ang analysis ko, right now, all of us are functioning with the limbic and the brainstem and the diencephalon as the ones running our brains usually, and especially our students' brains. So, as I said, higher centers integrate the lower centers. Natingnan mo, no? So, complexity nga, as we said, from brainstem up. Plasticity also from brainstem up. Okay? So, sabi ko nga sa inyo, brainstem, body temperature, heart rate, blood pressure. Then you move to the midbrain and the limbic. You have appetite, satiety, sleep, no? Arousal, motor regulation, emotional reactivity, sexual behavior. This is the limbic. Attachment is also limbic moving to cortical. Affiliation, the ability to think concretely, and of course the higher one is to think in the abstract, which we hope our students in the university can do. Pag concrete lang ang thinking ng ating mga estudyante, we usually fail them. And we say, no, that's not the way. That's a wrong answer. We are looking in the university for them to think in very high level ways, and that is abstract thought. But ngayon, sana tayo ngayon? Kasi because of COVID, walang masyadong ganito. And yet, we are helping to try to force this issue, concrete and abstract thought. Kaya maraming nasi-stress sila at tayo, and I will explain why in a little while. So the functional hierarchy, no? So let's move to this right side, okay? Where you see, right nga, blood pressure, heart rate, body temperature, motor regulation, arousal and sleep, attachment and sexual behavior in the limbic, and so forth. So you have the range here from calm, no, alarm and fear, and all the negative emotions. And of course, here are shown the neurotransmitters that have been found to be mediating and crossing over from the brainstem all the way to the cortex, crossing all of this. Kaya itong mga tatlong neurotransmitter na to, napaka-importante na alam natin. Dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Okay, these are not a very good slide, but I think I have already explained that. So yeah, so this is a slide that you can use to compare, for example, what I showed you earlier, and that's Bruce Perry's neurosequential model, no, the one that I showed you earlier, along with, you're familiar with this pyramid. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And parang baliktad, no? Baliktad ang pyramids. Kasi this one is the basic sustenance of life, physiological. And that's usually maintained by this part. And as you grow up into self-actualization up here, that's a very highly cortical function. Okay, so how does one regulate? Well, one regulates internally and one regulates externally. In terms of internal regulation, what can we find when a person is under stress? You know, the neocortical function instead of being 75%, shrinks down to 15%. So, matatalo na siya dito. Matatalo na rin siya dito. And this is just internal regulation. When you focus on the external, no, same thing happens. No? So, from calm, when 85% external regulation, 85%, the neocortex is superior when it's 85%. So it will make the lower levels calm yet alert. When you are dysregulated, so the 4Fs, 10% na lang ang neocortex. The limbic will take over. That's why depression will set in, anxiety disorders will set in, diencephalon, sira na ang sleep mo, sira na ang appetite mo, and of course, you wake up early in the morning with palpitations, you wake up early in the morning with hyperventilation spells, and so on and so forth. So there is a reversal of the hierarchy, my dear mga kapatid. So fight, flight, freeze, faint. Survival mode is the lower areas taking over the higher area. So we call it limbic and, well, to be accurate, limbic and brainstem strengthening, no? So kasi yan naman dapat, ito naman dapat ang prefrontal cortex ang nagko-control ng limbic system natin. Kaya pag gusto mong sapakin yung isang tao na sa harapan mo, pwede mo pang sabihin sa sarili mo, sandali lang, pag sapakin mo yan, baka naman kasuhan ka, wag mo na lang gagawin yon. So that is an example of your prefrontal taking over and calming down your limbic system. But you see, in the heightened bottom-up neuronal activity of somebody who is under stress or somebody who is in survival mode, you really have a reversal, bottom up instead of top bottom or up bottom. And what you have is moody, irritable persons who are alexithymic. Ano ang alexithymic? Wala. Lexi, pag-iisip, thymic, emotion. Ang isang tao na hindi alam kung ano ang nararamdaman niya. Alexithymia yan. Marami yan sa ating mga kabataan ngayon. And I will explain in a little while. So here you have it. No? You have really, no, an imbalance now of all of this. And regulating centers, as I said, are based on neurotransmitter function and other chemicals in your brain like the hormones. Now here in this slide, you have, let's see, two hormones, oxytocin and endorphin, and two neurotransmitters, the ones that were on the previous slide, serotonin and dopamine. Oh, let's talk about the chemicals that make you happy. Kasi iba-ibang happiness, mga kapatid. The chemicals that give you different kinds of happiness. Like dopamine, for example. This is really the ones that are released during pleasurable situations. Okay? It's the reward. It's the addiction neurotransmitter. So whenever, for example, you take shabu actually acts on releasing a huge amount of dopamine in your brains. So you get the feeling of being a superman or a superwoman. You finally you have a feeling of great strength and intelligence, and that's the dopamine rush. You also get it, by the way, by a sign of a notification on your cell phone. Diba? How many of you, when you're driving a car or you're doing something else, maybe teaching a class, and your cell phone signifies a notification. Ding, ding. All of you, be honest with me. but the urge to really go and go to the cell phone, take it out of your pocket, and even if you are driving, you will open and look at that. What is that? Because every time that your cell phone rings, it's a reward. It's dopamine. Boom. And you have a gratified kind of a wow. Somebody thinks about me. Somebody, considers me important. So that's dopamine. Serotonin. This is the happiness that you feel when you walk on the stage during graduation day and you are given a diploma and perhaps maybe uh, a medal or a trophy. The happiness that you feel walking down walking up to the stage and getting that, and the feeling of your family sitting down there in the graduation hall, that's serotonin, my dear friends. Now you go down to the two hormones here, oxytocin and endorphins. Endorphins are the chemicals that are released in your brain when you have adequate aerobic exercise. And I would suggest that all of you do get that, at least 3 or 4 times in a week. Because naturally occurring antidepressant, anti-anxiety siya. So, you really need to exercise. Even just 20 to 30 minutes, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Endorphins. And finally, you have, the cuddle hormone. It's the hormone that is secreted in your brain when you shake somebody's hand or when somebody gives you a 20-second hug. And studies show that it has to be 20 seconds, by the way, to have an oxytocin kind of release in your brain. Pero ano nangyari natin ngayon sa pandemic na ito? Walang masyadong oxytocin, di ba? Nobody's hugging us anymore. Nobody's even beso-beso na lang or even shaking hands. And that's a big loss. And so you must think about that when you're thinking about your students. Because even we ourselves are oxytocin deficient, perhaps. And maybe they are even more so, especially the ones who are by themselves and isolated alone. And so, what is the teacher's role in all of this, mga kapatid? Relational contagion is the term that Bruce Perry gives to this. A regulated, calm adult can regulate a dysregulated, anxious child. However, a dysregulated adult can never regulate a dysregulated child. And you have this to show this. So, if you are really driven by your neocortices, then you can kind of reverse this in a child. But kung ganyan ka na rin, never, never can you hope that you can cause a reversal in the child na magiging ganyan siya. And when I say child, I am referring to our students, mga kapatid. So, to come up with a kind of a, because the question that you will say, supposing Dr. Ben, hindi namin matutugunan yan, anong mangyayari? Well, you will no longer have a mentally well individual. You will have a mentally ill individual. And this probably can show you briefly what happens. So it all starts with stress, right? And I mentioned this already. Normal coping. So, okay, natutugunan mo lahat. You're able to do things to solve the problem. And you will call yourself as well. I am a well person. I'm okay. But supposing the problem exceeds your resources, both physical and external, internal and external resources, what will happen? You will abnormally cope. And this is when, as I said, cortisol and epinephrine are secreted in huge amounts in your body. And usually one of the things that happens, and the first sign, is an inability to sleep. Sleep is very important. The human brain needs to sleep at least 6 to 8 hours in a day, depending on, of course, Well, your work and things like that, but 6 to 8, because that's the time when the neurotransmitters that you have used when you were awake can now rebalance themselves so that you can reuse them the following day. So, if anybody here is sleep deprived, then there's a chance that your neurotransmitters are imbalanced and you need to kind of regulate your sleep. Sleep on time. Problem is, with the things that we're doing with our students, nobody's coordinating that. My suggestion later on will be ask your students how are they sleeping? Because if they're saying that, I have a developing brain and I'm not sleeping 7 to 8 hours in a day, you're causing damage to your students. We are causing damage to our students because one of the first neurotransmitters that gets disrupted is gamma aminobutyric acid, GABA. Or if you are a Bisaya like me, gaba-gaba ka na. Oh, because that will lead to an anxiety problem. Gigising ka na may palpitations ka, may hyperventilation syndrome ka na, may panic symptoms na. You think, naku, mamamatay na ba ako? O kaya nasisiraan na ba ako ng ulo? Now, if that goes uncorrected, my dears, what happens is the gamma aminobutyric acid system starts to get imbalanced, and then it will affect the balance of the norepinephrine serotonin system. And when you don't have serotonin and norepinephrine in your system anymore, or a low level of it, then you will become depressed. And of course, the brain does not like to become depressed. So it will try to inject dopamine into that whole mix. But what happens? It will create an abnormally happy state that we call mania. And that is the bipolar condition. Or the dopamine may already shoot this person like a liminoid state across the line of reality. And now this person already will be hallucinating, having illusions, having delusions, and we call that the psychotic state. So you see how the progression usually happens. And it all starts with this. So we really need to kind of know how to deal with it. Okay, so such is the brain. What about the adolescent mind? As I said, the adolescent mind is the second 12 years of life. And what happens, for example, so you imagine a child, once they become 13, you remember when you were 13, di ba nag-iiba ang ugali mo? Dati as a baby all the way to a toddler, all the way to 12 years old, grade 6, napakabait mo, di ba? Masunurin kang bata, hindi nagpapasaway sa school, hindi nagpapasaway sa mga parents. But all of a sudden, 13 years old, something happens. And that's what I call the switch of adolescence. It's not that this person becomes a bad person. It's just that his brain now has to do the changes to prepare himself for independent life. Now, one of the things that is happens when this switch of adolescence is turned on in the brain. And by the way, adolescence is common in all animal species, all mammalian species rather. All mammals undergo adolescence. So, one of the first things that we have found, or science has found, is the level of dopamine activity in the brain. What happens here is the dopamine activity suddenly becomes, the resting dopamine activity suddenly becomes low. It drops. Kaya ang mga adolescents natin parang walang kagana-gana sa buhay, di ba? Eh kung mga estudyante mo mga 18, 17, mga ganyan, 16, naho, even when you talk to them, walang ka-entusiasmong sumagot. Their facial expressions are so bored because really their whole world is a boring world. Why? Because the pleasure neurotransmitter, the levels have gone down. So, what happens is they become very negativistic, They become very irritable and not really engaging. And that thing that I am showing you, the nucleus accumbens, this is the dopamine strip that is the pleasure strip. So the whole dopamine activity in the whole brain has somehow dropped. But therefore, what they want now is to look for more dopamine. And so what do they do? No? They do things to increase the dopamine in the pleasure strip. This is the ventral tegmental area of the brainstem. Dopamine reaching to the nucleus accumbens of the limbic lobe. So, maghahanap sila ng ano ang bago, ano ang thrilling, ano ang exciting na gagawin. And that's why our youngsters are like that. They really look for new things, the ones that, kind of border on the dangerous. That's why adolescence is the time when, they do many harmful things kasi they drive very fast, they go bungee jumping, they dare themselves to jump from one roof to another and do all sorts of things like that, which we say are really, kind of crazy sometimes. But the reason why they're doing that is because of this happening in their brains. Because their emotions now are the ones that take precedence over anything else. Motivations change, and the way they appraise the world is a different way. Kaya if you also are a person listening to this talk and you are a parent with an adolescent, wag mo namang pagalitan masyado na nag-iiba yung kanyang pananaw sa buhay. Hindi naman nagiging disrespeto sa iyo yan. Hindi naman nagiging, although sometimes it may appear that they are, because really you will see later on, there's a drive to really push away from the parent. Di ba? And cling to the tribe. So, the essence of an adolescent brain by Dan Siegel. They have an emotional spark. They really look for social engagement. So, emotionality, di ba, my dears? Because of the dopamine. Social engagement. Ang problema ngayon, paano sila magso-socially engage? Online lang eh. That's why you can see that they're really suffering. Because they cannot interact with their co-students. Dati you attend the class. Okay, mahirap ang teacher. Masungit pa ang teacher. Mahirap ang subject. Pero pagkatapos na-dismiss kayo, pinagalitan kayo ng husto, you go outside and the kids talk among themselves. Grabe naman si sir, pinahiya ako sa klase and all of that. And there's a processing going on. And this processing makes them feel safe. Because that is the way their brains are wired at this stage. Novelty. Naghahanap sila ng bago. Paano sila makakahanap ng bago ngayon, mga kapatid? All of them are in their own rooms, in their own homes, frustrated by no Wi-Fi, frustrated by this and that, and there's no new thing. That's why tayo as teachers, we need to think about how can I teach my class in a novel way? That's exciting, that will cause a dopamine rush in my students. Not the same old boring lectures that we used to do. Creative exploration. Maybe instead of asking them to memorize this whole chapter as was we did before. Maybe you do it in a more creative way now. Maybe you will ask them to make their own chapter, write their own chapter so that they can explore themselves. Because they are really impulsive and have hyper-rational thinking. What is hyper-rational thinking? They think that excitement and danger and emotions are the things that rule the world. Kaya pag yung klase na tinuturo mo hindi exciting, hindi siya, well, I hope you don't have classes that are dangerous, but yeah, but the excitement, di ba? We need to kind of reteach that way. But they also have a less tendency to see the downside of a choice. Kaya maraming na-aksidente. The drive to push away against parents and leave home. Ito yung isang problema ng ating mga nanay at tatay naman. And I am among you. I have 2 children. and one of them is still in adolescence, no? So sometimes they don't like to hug and tap and follow you and be the little boy or girl that you knew when in elementary school. Hindi na. Kasi they have to do this, mga kapatid, para ipapractice nila yung sarili nila na kung wala na tayo, kaya nila yung mundo. So they go from comfortable to uncomfortable. You wonder about our kids. Bakit naman? I'm giving you all the comforts. You insist on doing it this way na hindi komportable. They look for the unfamiliar. Dati, kung ano lang, no, routine, happy na sila doon. Ngayon, ayaw. Gusto yung hindi alam. Gusto yung dangerous sometimes nga. Certain to uncertain. They really like, probing into uncertainty. And from safe to unsafe. Kaya we also need to protect them. We don't scold them, but we protect them. Let's go to the mind. As a psychiatrist of more than 20 years, this is the closest definition that I can probably say is the closest definition of a mind. And I am moving now to what can we do? So, based on a mathematical probability theory of a complex system, okay? The mind is a self-organizing, emergent process. So, continuously emerging. That is both embodied, nasa katawan natin, and relational. So, yung ibang katawan, another person, that regulates the flow of energy and information from inside you and between you. So, what is the mind there for? What I read from Dr. Dan Siegel's definition is the mind is the agency that mediates between your body and your friends, your neighbors, your parents, and the other human beings around you. Keep that in mind. Because if you want to be integrated, therefore, then you have to focus a lot, not only on yourself, but on your relationships. Because indeed, my dear brothers and sisters, an integrated mind is a mind that is mindful of their body all the time. So, what is that? Tulog mo, kapatid. Diet mo. Are you eating well? Are you eating properly? Do you move your bowels regularly? That's important because studies have shown that the gut is the second brain. Okay, there's a very high concentration of neurons there, so you have to take care of your gut. Probiotics can help, but you need to eat regularly and make sure that it's functioning well. Exercise, as I said, and of course, don't take drugs and all of those things that will destroy your body. Secondly, you need to be mindful of your mind. So, as much as possible, the mindfulness thing is be mindful of your emotions at any one time and your thoughts at any one time and your behavior at any one time. And of your relationships, you need to be mindful all the time of your human to human relationship. It's like, what is your relationship to your wife, really? What is your relationship to your children, really? What is your relationship to your co-worker, your co-teacher, your dean? What is your relationship to your students? The second is your relationship with the environment. How are you dealing with the world? How are you dealing with COVID? Are you using a mask? Do you believe in that? Do you use do you social distance? Do you wash your hands regularly? Because that's our world now. And the third, of course, is your relationship with God. Be mindful of that all the time. So that is what an integrated mind is. And I think because when we talk about how our children grow up, ito yung programming ng software ng mga utak ng mga kabataan natin. At tayo din. As children, as 0 to 6 years old child, syempre, nanay at tatay yan. The first year is always nanay. and then parents from 0 to 6. Pag sa elementary school, you have teachers and mentors, no? Sila na yung sikat sa mind ng child. Mami, hindi kita masyadong, hindi ako niwala sa sinasabi mo, mami eh. Si teacher sabi kasi na ganito eh. You remember that, right? And when they are 13 to 24 years, my dears, it's the peers. So tayong mga nanay at tatay at tayong mga teacher, wag na tayong umasa na tayo talaga ang paniniwalaan ng mga estudyante natin. They will not. They will more listen to their peers. So what should we do as teachers? We need to be conscious of that. And we therefore don't come down as this, parang Moses na bumaba sa from the mountain bringing a tablet of 10 laws. Tapos hampasin natin sa mga estudyante natin yan. Memorizein nyo to. Ay, hindi po eh. Because they don't really believe too much in authority. Not our students. But they will believe in talking about it and doing things in a group. So maybe we should teach that way. There's a little overlap here, but 21 to 55, our partners are the ones who are programming us. I'm a married man, so I know that I'm being programmed, and I welcome the programming because, women are very good programmers, generally speaking. They are better programmers than men. And if there's a man who will get angry at me because I said that, sige, you just get angry at me. But the truth of the matter is, respect the woman. You have many women in your life, men, you have many women in your life that have made you who you are. Your mother, yung mga kapatid mo na babae, tsaka ngayon mga anak nyong babae. Kung hindi ba kayo ini-influensyahan yan, ewan ko na lang. So, partners from 21 to 55. And of course, when we go 60 and up, especially when senior citizen like myself, we will little by little go back na yung programmer natin ay yung mga anak natin. So that's the circle of life, no? That we are going. Okay, so let me now show you some of the comments of some of the UP students in UP Manila. And of course, this will be said in their own language. Di mo feel na separated classes at bahay. Feeling mo dapat may nagawa ka munang productive bago mo gawin yung basic shiz like eating, ligo, etc. So can you imagine? Hindi na sila gumagawa ng basic shiz like eating at maligo. Kaya siguro when you go online, you remind them, especially if you're the first class in the morning, remind them that you will ask them about whether they ate their breakfast and whether they took their shower early in the morning. Masyadong oriented requirements yan. The pace is actually worse than regular school. The pace is actually worse than regular school. Teachers and administrators, please listen. Feeling like a prisoner in my own room kasi hindi matapos mag-rex. Feeling inadequate kasi hindi mo maturo sa sarili mo yung lesson. What does this mean? Diba? So, you can't just turn off your screen and leave the Zoom meeting or the Zoom lesson. You need to stay behind. You need to find a way to reach out to them and they can ask you questions that they don't understand. You remember nung tayo, di ba? Pag yung nakinig ka ng lecture ng teacher mo tapos marami kang hindi naintindihan, you catch the teacher after class and say, "Sir, do you have time? Kasi I need to clarify this." Do you have that in your classes? Please provide that time. Instead of just dumping them with performance tasks to do, process the performance task. Self-paced learning is a lie. Let's be honest. Yes, self-paced learning is a lie. Why? I just explained why. They have an adolescent's brain. They are driven by their limbic. They're not driven by their neocortices. They need us to help them do that. Kaya self-paced, no? You just say na you just pace yourselves. College na naman kayo, hindi nga eh. Kasi hindi nga kaya ng kanilang utak pa. Actually, the setup could have been a little better had they planned it out more. Kaso, as you can see, parang pilitan na lang lahat. Pilit pinagkasya yung requirements, pilit matutunan agad yung topics, kaya pati grades natin pilit na pasado. Boom. So what does this mean? Is this a phenomenon of our system having a square peg and trying to fit it in a round hole? A, lack of preparations. B, some instructors do not know how to shift or adjust to online classes like feel nila more recs. Better kahit wala na talagang natutunan mga tao dahil masyadong marami na. Internet, letter C, internet connection. Ito talaga main culprit. Ba't ako mag-breakdown bigla? Mahirap kasi online classes. Sa mga lugar pareha sa amin na wala talagang signal-signal. Meron pero sa gabi lang. So I had to sacrifice my health minsan or ruin my circadian rhythm. Look, they know what circadian rhythm is. They know that they're ruining it if they stay up too late. Letter D, UP pacing isn't compatible with online classes unless you are okay with being not sane or unhealthy. Nakakapagod. Kahit na anong sipag mo, there would still be piles of requirements to submit. I feel very unmotivated to do my requirements. Some profs don't even discuss the activities they give. Bigay lang ng bigay. I always have weekly breakdowns because I feel like I am not doing enough. I feel guilty even taking a day off. Wow. Non-UP students, konti na lang to. Some profs are late to class. Some profs have work even on weekends. Mas nakaka-anxious pag may exam. Mas maraming workload compared to face-to-face classes. Mataas ang standards kahit hindi normal setting. Nakaka-anxious at stress ang mga notification. In consideration, if ever na mawala during the exam kung anong last grade mo doon, yan na yon. If ever maling file na send mo, then need mo mag-send ng bago, then the highest grade you can get is 70%. Wow. Even in the way we are monitoring and evaluating them, di ba? Okay. So the 4 questions I will ask or we should ask ourselves regarding how we deal with our students and children. Nakikita ba natin talaga sila? Do we see them? And what I mean by see, my dear brothers and sisters, is you don't see the bad behavior. You don't see the mistake. You see the person behind the bad behavior and behind the mistake. Take time to look at why they had the bad behavior. Take time to see why they made the mistake. Body, mind, relationships. Pag hindi maganda yung pinapakita ng estudyante natin, pwede nating tanungin, kamusta ka na, anak? Are you sleeping well? Because we need to adjust. I mean, why kind of teach everybody like we are a factory producing uh, robots? When you talk to them, do you soothe them? Do you just say a few words and then shut them off? Do you even raise your voices to them? Do you make them feel safe? Or is it, teacher naman lang ako eh, hanggang dito lang ako. Bigay ako ng requirements, bigay ako ng grado, bahala kayo sa buhay nyo. Do we make them feel secure? These are the 4 questions that really are attachment based. And if we really care about our students, if we care about our children, we need to approach them in this manner. Because really, regulate, create, relate, and reason. You remember this? This is the brainstem. and the diencephalon. Pag nagpapalpitate na yung mga estudyante natin, pag nag-hyperventilate na yan, hindi natutulog ng maayos, huwag ka muna dito sa reason and reflect. Dito ka muna sa tulungan ko muna itong mag-regulate ng katawan niya. At hindi pa nga yan kulang eh. Pag na-regulate na, kamusta naman yung kanyang pag-deal ng kanyang kapwa? Are they still talking to their parents, or are they fighting their parents? Are they dealing with, are there social circles that they have? In fact, maybe it should be the teacher who should organize them into groups, and not only to study, to just talk to each other, kasi they need to relate. And if you can include yourself there, then good for you. Because kung ang ating mga estudyante, mga kapatid, nasa survival mode, we need to move them up here to reasoning and reflecting, no? And that's by helping them down here. So when we encounter a distressed student, do we deal with vulnerability or promote resiliency? Kasi pag mababa ang grado, sabihin natin, may problema sa pag-iisip yan. May problema sa ganito yan. May baka naman hindi masyadong mataas ang IQ niyan. You are dealing with vulnerability when you speak words like that. But if you look at it from an attachment perspective, you will look at it from a resiliency perspective of saying, how is this student dealing with their body? How is this student dealing with their mind? And how is this student dealing with their relationships? That is the resiliency mode. And I will move towards the end by suggesting a resiliency process. 4 squares, rectangles. Humbly identify adversity. Deconstruct the old ways and beliefs. You intervene and then you adapt. Repeat. Humbly identify adversity means, teacher, take care of yourself. Ensure your own connectivity. Alam natin lahat, tayong nasa universidad, nung bago mag-COVID, talagang pagod na pagod tayo sa paggagawa ng mga course packs, paggagawa ng learning, the online platforms, and all of that. So tayo, pagod na tayo. We are also actually in survival mode. Kaya wag na tayong mag-pretend na yung mga estudyante hindi rin survival mode. In fact, most of the teachers now should be very sympathetic towards their students, and not by, making them feel less about themselves. Work from home, even for the teacher, is more toxic. For the student, connectivity problems din, social networks, wala dyan, and they feel threatened or intimidated, as I showed you earlier. What about their family? Their dad and mom need to find connectivity for everyone. Financial uncertainty. Kaya ko bang babayaran ito lahat, yung tuition, because I've lost my job. And the work from home is super toxic for a family head. Schools, connectivity problems din. And of course, all the schools and the universities were caught by surprise. And of course, there are a lot of policies now because, as I said, the general trend that I see is we're just trying to use what we did in the old world and trying to fit it into the new one. So we must deconstruct the old way. We must adjust for connectivity. I think we are trying to do this naman in the university, understanding the connectivity problems of our students and our own. Not many people can buy gadgets. Not many people can buy, internet connectivity. Not many people can buy laptop computers. Watch for dosing and spacing of lessons. Siguro mahaba na yung 1-hour lecture. And then interactive na. But it's like I'm violating that now because I'm speaking more than an hour. But, well, I kind of think that this is a special case. I'm not really teaching you as a student, as a teacher and a student in an academic setting. Allow rational spacing between classes. Do we think of that? help manage and coordinate student schedule. And maybe this is where maybe the guidance offices can really help. No? Pag may problema ang estudyante sa kanilang schedule na they run together or whatever, hindi ba natin pwedeng tulungan para mara-rationalize natin yan? And of course, we need to have interactions that are not just academic between student, teacher, and family. Maybe improve the teacher to student ratio. And you will say, imposible yan kasi 180 students. We need to deconstruct the old ways. Find a way to do it. Mga brilliant people naman kayo lahat. So, family conferences when needed. Alam mo, as a doctor, no, trabaho ka sa ospital. Pag yung pasyente medyo hindi na maganda ang nangyayari, talagang ang dapat gawin ay kausapin yung pamilya. Ginagawa ba natin yan sa school? Kasi pag meron tayong estudyante na medyo hindi na maganda ang kalagayan, siguro it's time to call in the parents or the guardians and talk about this. Intervene and adapt. So, meron kayong naiisip na babaguhin? May mga paniniwala na gusto nyong baguhin? Subukan nyo and monitor closely. But you need to do it as soon as possible. And after the first semester, I think what we need to do is really find out what fits. Faster process for policy change. We need to do this a little bit more quickly. But in the new way. Not just quickly doing 2019 online. So it should be a bottom-up approach. What is meant by a bottom-up approach? Because I mentioned that already in the functioning of the brain. I'm not talking about the brain here. I'm talking about bottom-up, meaning bottom is yung mga estudyante natin. Talk to them. Get the comments that I showed you this afternoon. Give importance to that. Admin should be open to a more creative approach for each teacher or a subject. If the teacher, for example, says, I can teach this in another way, admin should not say, no, hindi. Kasi meron tayong mga rubrics dyan eh. Meron tayong mga we need to deconstruct all of those, my dears. And of course, at the end of the day, we need to repeat that cycle again and again and again. Constantly assess as the changes emerge. Deconstruct approaches that don't seem to work. Don't cling to them. If they don't work, change them. Evaluate why they did not work and create new approaches and then try again. Implement. And this is my last slide. So we described the human brain in survival mode. We discussed common difficulties that students and teachers dealing with online learning happens. And we suggested some psychologically minded adjustments on how to teach. And well, I think I have impressed enough the principle of the need to cross the liminal space. Deconstruct na natin yung style natin pre-COVID. Alamin natin kung ano ang katotohanan ng mundo natin ngayon na may COVID. Magagaling naman tayo as human beings and as Filipinos. I think we are so creative and we are so blessed with inspiration to create new things. Let's hope that God is with us in the coming months and in the coming years. God bless everyone. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vista, for that very informative lecture. We have learned so much from you, and for sure, our teachers will be able to apply the learnings for their future classes. Before we move on to our open forum, we will award the Certificate of Appreciation to our guest speaker. Allow me to read the citation. Student Health and Welfare Committee, College of Agriculture and Food Science, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Salvador Benjamin D. Vista for generously sharing his expertise by serving as research speaker in the webinar entitled Teaching and Learning in Survival Mode, given the 17th day of December 2020, signed by Dr. Catherine Ann P. Castillo Israel, Chair of the CAF Student Health and Welfare Committee, and Dr. Elpidio M. Agbisit Jr., Dean of the College of Agriculture and Food Science. Thank you, Dr. Vista.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure and honor to join you. Magkasama tayo lahat dito. Much of what I said is I coming from my own personal experience and my own mistakes that I have made myself. So if I appeared somehow to be kind of scolding, it's like I was not scolding you. I was actually scolding myself because those are mistakes that I have made too. Okay. Thank you very much for the recognition po.
Thank you po. So to facilitate the open forum, may we call on Professor Hazel Ann Makahiya of the Institute of Crop Science. Prof. Hazel.
Thank you, Sir Kenneth, and thank you, Dr. Vista, for your timely and helpful topic and for what you shared to us. So we have some questions here. First is from Ma'am Kesha Tingson of College of Forestry and Natural Resources, UPLB. On remote learning setup, how can the faculty ensure the consistency of the interest of their students within the semester? We already applied different learning strategies, mix of traditional, interactive, gamification of lessons, etc. However, students tend to lose their interest or attention in the topics, especially during the end of the semester. Students shared that they had so many deadlines per week that they can't keep up with it. Do you think that group activities is better on remote learning? Thank you.
Yeah, well, there are several there are several issues that you raised there. Um, this is where really the concept of deconstruction happens eh. Kasi ang unang sagot ko diyan, you have to monitor often. You have to try kasi tayong lahat, ako as a teacher, I try something. You said gamification, group interaction, and all of that. Ang suggestion ko diyan is you try something and then you let the student evaluate. So the class should not just be about the topic, but it should also be a regular feedback with the student on whether yung pamamaraan na pagturo, paano nila natanggap yun. So, can you imagine, wild idea to but I try to do this when I teach my residents, for example, in PGH. Merong lecture. Then afterwards, there's a kind of an evaluation on, so how was this done? How was it for you? Is this a good thing for you? And then you get feedback on, okay, so if those of you who did not feel that, you learned much from it, how would you like to do this topic again? And at the risk of repeating that particular topic using another way, and maybe you can even ask the students, how would it kaya be better to learn this subject, my dear students? And then try to implement that. But see, dito yung deconstruction, mga mahal ko. Kasi tayo, in our minds, hindi kasi kailangan may, di ba, curriculum may objectives, may schedule, but this is one of the things that we're challenged to do. maybe we don't stick to the course outline as strictly as before. Di ba? Kasi we need to talk about the topic. Hindi masyadong maraming ano yan, sir. Hindi kami ano. So what would be the best way for you to learn? Siguro ganito, ganito. And then let them talk. Let them talk in your classroom. Let them decide. Then once they've decided, then you can try. Time-consuming lang nga siya, but I think worthwhile yon kasi the learning should not emanate just from the teacher now. It should also emanate from how the students want to learn. And I don't know, that's just my suggestion. But it's been successful for me as a teacher because it hindi na kasi natin alam, we've never experienced online ourselves. True? True. So hindi natin alam how it is to sit where they are. So maybe my suggestion is let's learn from them on how it is to be where they are. And the way to do that is after a topic or even before, no? So okay, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about the human brain. What do you think, my dear students, would be the best way to learn this? And then you have them discuss. No, you have them all in a Zoom meeting, say 20, 30, and all of them give suggestions. And then the majority is the thing that you try. Wala ka na doon. They cannot be bored with you anymore. They don't have any reason to be bored with you anymore because they actually were the ones who suggested it. So they may suggest, siguro we'll make a game. It's gamification and all of this. So, yun. And, well, mga mahal ko, I'm actually one of the old uh, reptiles of education. No? So, I don't know many of the new techniques, but I think I need to learn. And that's where what I'm trying to tell you. I need to deconstruct my old archaic beliefs about how to teach. So, that's how I will answer your question, ma'am. Tanungin natin sila. Paano nyo ba, sa tingin nyo, paano nyo gustong matutunan itong topic na to? And then try to implement it as much as possible. Go to your dean. Oh, dean, hindi ito, or your chairman. Oh, maybe I'll try something new. Why not? And in the process kasi of them doing it, no, they learn. And then you also learn na, this topic pala would be better taught by a lecture. This topic pala would be better taught by group activity. This topic could be taught by gamification. So I hope I tried to answer. I hope I did. So I'll end there.
I have another question here from Ma'am Bleshi Carihero of ULB. If we have less sleep in the evening because we need to be awake to take advantage of good internet connectivity, can this lost sleep be recovered in the morning or afternoon to complete at least 6 to 8 sleep a day?
Yeah, thank you for the question, ma'am. It's a question that I am really asked very often by my patients and by my students. Hindi po eh. Kasi yung utak natin po, sabi ko nga, parang computer yan na it runs on electrochemical energy. So, while we're awake like now, electricity and chemicals are being expended as we're talking, as we're listening, as we're learning and interacting, no? So, that's why the human brain needs to sleep in 24 hours, 7 to 8, para ma-rebalance yun. And unfortunately, it has to sleep at night. We have a gland, no, that actually connects our brains to the sun. So you say, wow, Dr. Vista, all our brains are connected to the sun. Yes, they are. The pineal gland is the gland that secretes the hormone melatonin, right? Melatonin, it's like when the sun is up, right? The pineal gland will sense the blue light. Blue light yung sa sun eh. And you're supposed to be awake. When it goes to the afternoon, like ngayon, papunta na tayo ng 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, the kind of light that is produced in our environment becomes orange and yellow until sunset. So when it shifts from orange to yellow, then the pineal gland starts secreting melatonin. And the melatonin will suffuse your brain and tell your brain, brain, slow down now. So that by the time 9 o'clock comes in the evening, the brain needs to rest. That's why, di ba, little babies, when they're regulated already, automatic yan eh. Pag gabi, talagang natutulog sila ng mahaba. Di ba? Kasi it's controlled nga by the pineal. So, all of us need to kind of follow that. And the problem nga ngayon with this online thing is the connectivity. But what can I say? There is no way to make up for the loss of sleep at night. Sleep at night should be the absolute healthy way of running your life. Now, kung hindi ma-help kasi yung connectivity nga, try to make your week. Try to make your week in a way na yung puyat days mo hindi masyadong marami po. Kasi alam mo, sa clinics ko, ang dami-daming nagkokonsulta sa akin for anxiety and depression na mga empleyado ng mga call center. Bakit? Baliktad yung kanilang circadian rhythm. Yung diurnal rhythm nila is baliktad. And their brain suffers for it. Kasi kung hindi mababalanse kasi yung serotonin, yung dopamine, yung norepinephrine, mawiwindang ang daloy ng elektrisidad sa computer mo. Magiging sinok-sinok siya. O kaya magiging imbes na 220 volts yung takbo, nagiging 110 volts na lang. At pag 110 volts na lang yung takbo ng elektrisidad sa computer mo, mga mahal ko, yan ang tawag na depression. So, pag may depression ka, pupunta ka sa doktor na kagaya ko, bibigyan ka ng gamot para tataas ang serotonin sa utak mo. Kaya yan ang mga gamot na escitalopram, yan ang mga gamot na Prozac, yan ang mga gamot na ano. Ano ang ginagawa ng mga gamot na yan? Tinataas nila ang serotonin sa utak natin. Pero kung conscious tayo niyan, please, try to get good sleep because that will really balance your brain. Now, if it cannot be helped, try to limit it only na kasi walang buwian yan, ma'am. So, supposing puyat ako kagabi. So, matapos yung trabaho ko ng 10 o'clock, matutulog ko ng 10 o'clock ng umaga hanggang 4 o'clock ng hapon, which is something that the call center employees usually do. The restorative sleep does not happen when the sun is up. Why? Because the pineal gland says, hindi pa dapat matulog yan kasi alam ko na yung araw nasa ibabaw pa The sun is still here. So why should you rebalance? Why should the brain rebalance? So you confuse your brain. And that's why when I have depressed individuals who come to me, I don't only give them medicine, but I really say we need to sleep properly. You sleep at 10 o'clock at night. You wake up at maybe 6 or 7 the following morning, and you go under the sun. Why should you go under the sun? Mga mahal ko, you try to do that early in the morning. Why? You have to train your brain na umaga na. The pineal gland will look for that umaga na, and then you don't go back to sleep. Kasi you will confuse it Diba? And so, I talked about blue light. So let me end my answer by saying, your gadgets are blue light. So if you also open your gadgets all the way up to your sleeping time of 9 or 10 o'clock at night, you are confusing your pineal gland as well. Akala ng pineal gland nyo, mga mahal ko, na umaga pa. Kaya hindi kayo naaantok pag kayo nagpipisbook-pisbook hanggang alas 9 ng gabi. Kasi ang gadget mo, blue light yan, mga mahal ko. So please, before you go to sleep at night, you tell your kid and you tell yourself, maybe an hour before, not to open your gadgets because that is confusing your brain. And you will say after all of this, imposible naman yung sinasabi ni Dr. Vista. Paano naman natin gagawin yan na matatapos yung lahat ng requirements kung ganyan? Kasi nga, mga mahal ko, we are talking about the requirements coming from a 2019 perspective. We need to change the way we evaluate too. Yung evaluation natin hindi na yung how many quizzes passed 30%, how many final exams passed, how many, hindi, iba na. We need to change that. Okay, I'll stop there also.
To Dr. Vista. So I'll have an last question po.
Sige po.
So from Sir Ian Mar Gabriel Aguila of UPLB. The talk is mainly focused on how the students feel and behave during online learning and the ways how teachers can help them. On the other side, how can we help teachers, most especially those who are still in their adolescent stage, given that they are also affected with these problems of pandemic and online learning?
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for that, Sir Ian. No? What did I say in the talk, though? Number one, hindi talaga natin pwedeng tulungan yung ating mga anak at ating mga estudyante kung tayo din, baliktad din yung ating utak. Na yung nagdadala din sa atin yung reptilian brain at yung mammalian brain. Many of us are like that now, anak ko. Ian, many of us are like that now. Not only you. So what can I say as answer to you? Be mindful of that. What I will tell teachers is, you know that thing I said in the lecture? An integrated mind is mindful of their body, is mindful of their mind, and is mindful of their relationships. Examine yourself, or maybe go to someone who can help you examine yourself. It might not be a psychiatrist or psychologist, somebody else who can monitor that for you. Simple man lang yun eh. Mindful of your body, mindful of your mind, mindful of your relationships. So yung relationships, anak, would be human-to-human relationships, your relationship with your environment, which means COVID, the greater world, the house that you live in, the dorm that you live in, the community that you're in. How are you relating to that? And of course, the third will be your spiritual relationship. So if you approach using that, you can regulate yourself. Because what did I say? Hindi ka talaga magiging effective in helping your student learn kung ikaw din nasa survival mode ka pa rin. So sabihin mo, so paano kami aalis sa survival mode? Well, definitely, we cannot just blink our eyes and then COVID will go away. But what I can tell you is, whatever problems we as teachers are facing, if you use that integrated mind concept, you can solve some problems that will help you move up in the hierarchy of the brain, so that you yourself are thinking about things in an analytical way, not as a survival way. Now, supposing then take a step back. So what was I saying earlier when I answered the first question? Hirap ako, Doc, kasi survival mode ako, teacher ako, survival mode ako. I'm also an adolescent. So, how can I move forward with this? My dears, that's what I'm telling you. There's a very rich resource in your students themselves. We need to have a mindset of learning from them. Ako nga, I learn a lot from them. Dito sa Zoom lang, before the Zoom, we have my dear students, can you teach me what I pindot here so that I can do this and I can pindot there too? Diba? It's fun. It makes you a human. It makes you part of them. Pero talaga you have to be mindful of this, Ian. Matuto tayo sa kanila. Maybe we can teach better because they tell us how to teach them better. Who better to tell us than the recipients, di ba? Sabihin mo, ay wala namang alam yan, Doc, kasi kaya student sila eh. No, 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 no. Because if you were in a gentle mode of not being the authoritarian teacher, yeah? Because most of us should not be authoritarian teachers anymore. We should be more facilitators rather than authoritarian teachers. Facilitate. I don't know what to do with this class. I don't know how to teach this to you. Maybe you have suggestions on how I should teach this to you or how you should learn this. It's basic humility, mga mahal ko eh. And basic humility nga in the deconstruction of our old beliefs. I'm sorry to keep on repeating that and repeating that, but that is really uh, uh, the basic thing. We have some other comments on the chat box. No, yeah. But I'm glad some of you are happy with what you heard. I hope you have the time po to read my greeting to Doc Ben. Ah, who is this? Rosemary. Where is Rosemary? Did you have a greeting, Rosemary? I did not see your greeting. Saan ba yan, anak? Hazel?
Let
May
me see
greeting
po.
ba siya?
Right. Ito po. Let me read Ma'am Rosemary's comment po. We have another comment po from Ma'am Anadisa Ramirez. This is not a question but a comment. We faculty also feel guilty and have feelings of inadequacies. I myself ask if I am doing enough for my students. Yun po. Ma'am Rosemary Eusebio po, this is not a question but a congratulatory note to Doc Ben and to CAPS for inviting Doc Ben. Doc Ben is one of the best speakers on mental health who was and should be regularly invited by UPLB when the UPLB seminar on facilitating learning for new UPLB instructors or professors hopefully resumes, if not in person but through online. Warmest regards from Rose and Lely, co-facilitators of said seminars. God bless you and may we all spread your advocacies of mindfulness.
Yes, well, thank you for the kind words, Ma'am Rose. Nami-miss ko na yung aking interaction annually with the new faculty, but I guess we can thank CAF for I thank CAF for inviting me again ngayon. Ako I don't know why, but I have an affinity for Los Baños. I don't know why I'm in UP Manila. Pwede ba akong lumipat na lang dyan?
Yes, sir. Welcome po. Okay po, thank you po for the other questions. We'll try our best to answer this and give this to Dr. Vista. So we will collect them from the Google Forms po. So we can proceed and move on, Sir Kenneth.
Thank you, Dr. Vista. Thank you, Prof. Hazel. To formally end our program, may we call on the Chair of the College of Agriculture and Food Science Student Health and Welfare Committee to give her closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, mga CAFSama, please welcome Dr. Catherine Ann T. Castillo Israel. Doc Katsi?
Ayan. Hello. Thank you very much, Kenneth. Thank you very much. So this is just a short message to close this very successful webinar. So thank you very much again, Dr. Vista. You were we are really so honored to have you, and I think you are really the best person to talk about this teaching and learning in the survival mode topic. Thank you very much. And sa uulitin, sir, marami pa po kaming gustong ipa-webinar na kukunin namin ulit kayo. Ayan, dahil alam kong marami kayong fans dito sa UPLB.
Fans ba, fans ba tawag? Thank you, Ma'am Katsi. And pasensya ka na sa aking mabagal na mga reply sa mga email mo. Kasi alam mo naman ang buhay ng doktor, hindi naman ang buhay namin para sa sarili namin. But yeah. But congratulations, and I will be open to coming back and joining you again, no? Salamat CAF, no? Salamat talaga sa CAF.
Thank you po. And thank you po kay Dean sa pag-support po sa ating activity ngayon. And just to wrap up everything, so meron po kaming prepare na short video kasi kung makikita nyo ano ba yung CAFSama nyo kami, no, kanina pa natin nakikita sa screen. So it's students and parents health and wellness platform of the college. So let's watch this video to learn more about this.
Thank you, Dr. Katsi. May we remind everyone to accomplish the post-webinar evaluation form. Only those participants who successfully submitted their responses will receive the electronic copy of their certificate of attendance. You may visit the link provided in the comment section, or you may scan the QR code flash on your screens. The link will be open until 5 p.m. tomorrow, December 18, 2020. So for our panelists po, no, before you leave the meeting, may we request to open your camera for a short photo op.
Okay. Kenneth, ikaw na magbilang.
Si Dean. Wala si Dean.
Dean, nandyan kayo, Dean?
May isa pa siyang meeting.
Okay po. Ma'am Adela, kayo na lang. Okay.
Meet.
Kenneth, ikaw magbilang.
Sino ba po?
Si Rachel, ikaw ang kumuha, Rachel.
Ako ang kukuha. Sige po. Ready
Okay.
po.
3, 2, 1.
Okay po. Isa pa po. Okay. Wait lang po. Wait lang po. Wait lang po. I-piece ko lang po. Okay. Okay. Ready po. Wait lang po. 1, 2. Okay po. Okay na po, Sir Ken.
Everyone for attending and see you on our
Thank you,
next.
Katsi. Thank you, Kenneth.
Ay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Dean. Ayan si Dean. Hindi nakasama sa picture.
Sorry, ma'am. Galing akong eye crops at andun si Chancellor.
Okay, sir. Thank you po.
Thank you very much, Katsi. Thank you much, team. Thank you.
Thank you po, Dr. Vista.
Thank you, everyone. Keep safe po.
Eval form, Kenneth? Anong i-announce mo yung eval? May nagtatanong.
QR code po ay pakipost na lang po
Kenneth,
ulit.
lagay niyo na lang sa chat box.
Okay po. May magsasend po ng link for eval form.
Ipopost po ni Rachel yung eval form sa chat box. Thank you very much to all who attended.
Okay. Alis na po ako. Medyo naputol yung...
Thank you po. Email na lang po, sir.
Salamat po, Dr. Bishna.
Bye-bye. Ingat po
Thank you,
kayo
sir.
lahat.
Kayo sa amin.
Sa uulitin.
Bye-bye
Maraming
po.
ulit.
Lilipat na nga ako dyan eh.
Sir, tara na.
Eh,
Sunduin na namin kayo.
Iwanan ko na yung UP Manila. O sige, bye-bye. See you.
Bye, sir.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.
Available na po yung evaluation form sa ating pong chat box. So, paki-visit na lang po nung link. Available po yung link hanggang bukas 5 p.m. Thank you.
Very much, Kenneth. Thank you sa lahat. Thank you, Ma'am Adele.
Congrats, Katsi.
Salamat po sa mga umaten.
Thank you, Ma'am Bam.
Kasama nyo kami.
Hahanapan pa. Anong budget si Kat? Hahanapan pa pa.
Kaka na ako magpa-merienda, Ma'am Katsi.